It's a crisp fall morning in the suburbs of Denver, 2023. The streets are lined with trees shedding their amber and crimson leaves, signaling the start of another season. In a cozy, two-story home tucked away on Maplewood Drive, we meet the protagonist of our story, Marcus Hayes. Marcus is the kind of guy everyone roots for. At 38, he's a devoted father, loving husband, and the kind of neighbor who mows the elderly couple's lawn next door, just because he had a little extra time. A civil engineer by profession, Marcus is meticulous in everything he does, from planning city roads to organizing family movie nights for his wife, Clara, and their two kids, 10-year-old Maddie and 7-year-old Jack. Life seems picture-perfect for Marcus, but as we all know, perfection has a way of cracking when you least expect it. On this particular morning, Marcus wakes up to the smell of Clara's coffee brewing downstairs. It's one of the simple rituals they've shared for over a decade. Clara is in the kitchen, her auburn hair pulled into a loose ponytail, humming softly as she pours a cup for herself and sets another by Marcus's side of the table. "Big day?" she asks when Marcus enters, still groggy but smiling. "Just the usual," he replies, kissing her on the cheek. "I'll finish up the Oak Ridge project today. Should be home by 6. Clara nods, though there's a flicker of something in her expression. Something Marcus can't quite place. It's gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual warmth. At work, Marcus dives into his day with the precision of someone who genuinely loves what they do. He's always been proud of his ability to solve problems, whether it's finding the most efficient way to route traffic or helping Jack with his math homework. But by mid-afternoon, Marcus's phone buzzes with a notification that pulls him out of his focus. It's a text from Clara, "Running late tonight. Meeting some colleagues after work. Don't wait up for dinner." Marcus shrugs it off. Clara works as a marketing executive, and late nights aren't uncommon for her. Still, he feels a twinge of disappointment. He'd been looking forward to their Thursday night tradition of watching old sitcoms together after the kids went to bed. Later that evening, Marcus puts Maddie and Jack to bed, reading them their favorite bedtime story before turning off the lights. He settles into the living room, the TV flickering quietly as he scrolls through his phone, occasionally glancing at the clock. When Clara finally comes home around 11:30 p.m., Marcus notices something off. She's unusually quiet, slipping past him with a muttered, "Long day." There's a faint trace of perfume he doesn't recognize, but he dismisses it. Clara always said she loved trying new scents. Still, a seed of doubt is planted in Marcus's mind. He brushes it aside, reminding himself that Clara has always been loyal and dedicated to their family. As the days go by, subtle changes begin to creep into their routine. Clara is on her phone more often, tilting the screen away whenever Marcus walks by. She's taking more late-night work meetings and seems distant during their rare moments together. Marcus tries to shake off his growing unease, but it's not easy. He starts to notice patterns. The quiet phone calls in the other room, the sudden interest in her appearance, things she used to reserve for date nights but now seems to do every day. One evening, as Marcus loads the dishwasher after dinner, he catches Clara texting someone under the table, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. When he asks who she's talking to, she hesitates for just a second too long before replying, "Just a coworker. We're brainstorming ideas for a pitch." Something about her tone makes Marcus's chest tighten. It's a small thing easily explained away, but it doesn't sit right with him. By the end of the week, Marcus finds himself replaying moments in his head, searching for clues that could explain Clara's behavior. He hates feeling suspicious. It goes against everything he believes about their relationship. But the nagging sense that something isn't right refuses to let him rest. He decides to confide in his best friend, Sam, over beers on Saturday night. "Maybe I'm just overthinking it," Marcus says, swirling his drink absently. "But she's been acting different lately." Sam, who's known Marcus since college, leans back in his chair, frowning. "Have you talked to her about it?" Marcus shakes his head. "Not yet. I don't want to accuse her of something without proof. What if it's just work stress, and I'm reading too much into it?" "Could be," Sam says carefully. But if your gut's telling you something, maybe you should trust it. Just keep an eye out, you know? The conversation sticks with Marcus. That night, he lies awake in bed long after Clara has fallen asleep. The idea of invading her privacy feels wrong, but the uncertainty is eating away at him. Finally, he makes a decision. He'll start looking for answers, not to accuse Clara, but to put his own doubts to rest. The next morning, Marcus begins paying closer attention. He notices little things. Clara's reluctance to share her phone, the new lingerie she bought but hasn't worn at home, the way she lights up whenever her phone buzzes with a message. One evening, when Clara steps out for another work dinner, Marcus checks their shared phone account. His heart sinks as he sees hours-long calls and hundreds of texts to a number he doesn't recognize. He writes down the number, his hand trembling. The following week, Marcus decides to follow Clara. It's a decision he agonizes over, but he needs to know the truth. On Thursday evening, when Clara says she's heading to another work meeting, Marcus waits until she leaves before grabbing his keys and following her car at a safe distance. She drives across town, eventually pulling into the parking lot of a trendy restaurant. Marcus parks nearby, watching as she steps out of the car and greets a man he's never seen before. The man leans in to kiss her cheek, and they walk inside together, laughing. Marcus sits in his car, his mind racing. This is it, the confirmation he didn't want but couldn't ignore. That night, Marcus doesn't confront Clara. Instead, he begins planning his next steps. He knows he needs to protect himself and his children, but he also wants to approach the situation with clarity and purpose. This is just the beginning of Marcus's journey, a journey filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, resilience. Marcus wakes up the morning after his discovery feeling like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He barely slept, his mind consumed with the image of Clara laughing and leaning into another man at the restaurant. The hurt is raw, but so is the growing resolve in his chest. He needs to take control of the situation. At breakfast, Clara is as cheerful as ever, humming a tune as she prepares pancakes for the kids. Marcus watches her, his heart sinking further. How could she act so normal after what he saw? "Daddy, can we go to the park today?" Maddie asks, her voice bright with excitement. Marcus forces a smile. "Sure, sweetie. Let's go after lunch." As they eat, Clara glances at her phone several times, her face lighting up at each notification. Marcus notices, his stomach churning, but he stays quiet. This isn't the time or place to confront her. That afternoon, while Clara is out running errands, Marcus decides it's time to gather more evidence. He logs onto their shared phone account again, noting that Clara has continued texting the same number. This time, he copies the records and saves them to a secure folder on his laptop. He feels guilty for snooping, but he knows he needs concrete proof before taking any action. For now, his priority is protecting Maddie and Jack. The days pass slowly, each one filled with mounting tension. Clara's behavior grows more suspicious. She spends more time away from home, claims to be working late more frequently, and becomes evasive when Marcus asks about her day. One evening, Marcus decides to confide in Sam again. "She's still lying to me," Marcus says, his voice tight with frustration. "I don't want to believe it, but all the signs are there." Sam nods sympathetically. "Have you talked to her about it yet?" "Not yet," Marcus admits. "I'm not sure how to approach it without her denying everything. I need to be absolutely sure before I confront her." Sam leans back in his chair, considering. "You're doing the right thing by being cautious. Just remember, you don't deserve this, man. Whatever happens, you've got people in your corner." That weekend, Marcus hires a private investigator. It's a decision that doesn't come easily, but he knows it's the best way to get the answers he needs. The investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Diana, assures Marcus that she'll handle everything discreetly. "This isn't my first case like this," Diana says, her tone professional yet empathetic. "I'll get you the truth, whatever it may be." Marcus nods, his jaw clenched. "Thank you. That's all I want." While Diana begins her work, Marcus tries to maintain a sense of normalcy at home. He spends as much time as he can with Maddie and Jack, taking them to the park, helping with their homework, and tucking them in at night. But even in these moments of joy, the weight of Clara's betrayal lingers in the back of his mind. A week later, Diana calls Marcus with an update. "I have photos and video evidence," she says, her voice steady. "Your wife has been meeting with the same man regularly. They've been seen at restaurants, parks, and even a hotel." Marcus feels his chest tighten, but he forces himself to stay calm. "Send me everything," he says. "I need to see it for myself." When Diana's email arrives, Marcus hesitates before opening it. His hands shake as he clicks through the files, each image and video confirming what he already suspected. Clara and the man, whose name Diana identifies as Andrew, are unmistakably close, their interactions intimate and affectionate. It's like a knife to the heart, but it also solidifies Marcus's next steps. The following evening, Marcus begins preparing for the inevitable confrontation. He compiles all the evidence he's gathered, phone records, photos, and videos, into a single folder. He also consults with a lawyer to understand his options and ensure he's taking the right steps to protect himself and his children. His lawyer, Karen, is blunt but supportive. "You're doing the right thing by documenting everything," she says. "This will give you the upper hand if things escalate. Just make sure you stay calm when you confront her. The last thing you want is for this to turn into a shouting match." Marcus nods, taking her advice to heart. The confrontation happens on a quiet Wednesday evening. The kids are staying at Marcus's sister's house for the night, giving him and Clara the privacy to have this difficult conversation. As Clara walks through the front door, Marcus is waiting in the living room. His laptop sits open on the coffee table, the folder of evidence ready to be shown. "Hey," Clara says, her voice bright. "What's with the serious face?" "Sit down," Marcus says, his tone calm but firm. Clara's smile falters, and she hesitates before sitting across from him. "What's going on?" Marcus takes a deep breath, meeting her gaze. "I know about Andrew." Clara's eyes widen, and for a moment, she looks genuinely shocked. But then her expression shifts to defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Clara," Marcus says, his voice steady. He turns the laptop toward her, clicking through the folder of evidence. "I have proof. The texts, the photos, the videos. I know everything." Clara's face pales as she stares at the screen. "Marcus, I can explain." "Explain what?" Marcus interrupts, his voice rising slightly. "That you've been sneaking around behind my back? That you've been lying to me and our kids? How do you even begin to explain this?" Tears well up in Clara's eyes, and she covers her face with her hands. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she sobs. It just did. I didn't know how to tell you." Marcus feels a pang of sadness, but it's quickly overtaken by anger. "You didn't know how to tell me, so you just kept lying? Do you even realize what you've done to this family?" Clara looks up at him, her face streaked with tears. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I never wanted to hurt you." Marcus shakes his head, his voice cold. "Sorry doesn't fix this, Clara. Sorry doesn't undo the lies or the betrayal. I trusted you. Our kids trusted you. And you threw it all away for what? Some fling." Clara doesn't respond, her sobs filling the silence. Marcus ends the conversation by telling Clara that he's filing for divorce. He makes it clear that his priority is Maddie and Jack, and he won't let anything compromise their well-being. As Clara leaves the house, Marcus feels a mix of relief and heartbreak. This is the beginning of a new chapter, one he never wanted but knows he needs to face head-on. If you're as invested in this story as we are, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The next chapter will take you deeper into Marcus's journey as he fights for his family and begins to rebuild his life. Stay tuned. After the confrontation, Clara moves out of the family home. It's a quiet, unceremonious departure, with just a few suitcases and a somber promise to the kids that she'll see them soon. Marcus watches from the doorway, his emotions a storm of anger, sadness, and relief. For the first time in weeks, the house feels both empty and heavy at the same time. The kids take Clara's absence hard. Maddie withdraws into her room, spending hours with her sketchpad, while Jack becomes clingy, refusing to let Marcus out of his sight. One evening, as Marcus tucks Jack into bed, his son asks a question that nearly breaks him. Is Mommy coming back? Marcus hesitates, unsure how to answer. Mommy loves you very much, he says finally. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and they have to figure things out. No matter what, I'll always be here for you. Jack nods, but his eyes stay fixed on Marcus. Promise. Promise, Marcus replies, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. In the weeks that follow, Marcus throws himself into being both mom and dad. He packs lunches, helps with homework, and even learns how to braid Maddie's hair. A task that takes several YouTube tutorials and more than a few failed attempts. At the same time, Marcus begins preparing for the custody battle. His lawyer, Karen, warns him that Clara might fight for joint custody, especially if her lawyer spins the narrative that the kids need their mother. I just want what's best for them, Marcus tells Karen during one of their meetings. I don't want to punish Clara, but I need to make sure the kids are okay. Karen nods, her expression serious. Then we focus on your stability, your involvement in their lives, and Clara's recent behavior. The evidence you've collected will help, but it's important to show the court that you're the best option for primary custody. Section 2. Clara's counterattack. As the divorce proceedings begin, Clara's demeanor shifts. Gone is the tearful woman begging for forgiveness. In her place is someone determined and calculating, clearly taking advice from her lawyer. During a mediation session, Clara claims that Marcus's full-time job as an engineer makes him less available for the kids. They need someone who can be there for them, she says, her tone firm but measured. I'm willing to work part-time to make sure they have the attention they deserve. Marcus feels his jaw tighten, but Karen speaks before he can. Your Honor, my client has consistently demonstrated his dedication to his children, balancing a demanding career with active involvement in their daily lives. In contrast, Mrs. Hayes's recent actions, specifically her infidelity and subsequent relocation, raise questions about her stability and priorities. Clara glares at Karen, but Marcus can see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. For the first time, she looks like she's questioning whether her strategy will work. Outside of court, Clara starts making subtle moves to undermine Marcus. She shows up at Maddie's school unannounced, bringing lunch and lingering long enough to chat with the teacher about how hard it's been to be away from her kids. Maddie mentions this to Marcus later, her tone confused. Mommy said she's really sad without us. Why can't we just all live together again? Marcus takes a deep breath, crouching down to meet Maddie's gaze. Mommy and I are trying to figure out what's best for everyone, he says gently. But no matter what happens, we both love you so much. That will never change. Maddie nods, though her expression remains troubled. Marcus feels a fresh wave of anger toward Clara, not just for what she's done to him, but for the confusion she's causing their kids. Section 3. A game-changing revelation. In the middle of the custody battle, Diana, the private investigator Marcus hired, calls with new information. I found something you're going to want to see, Diana says, her tone serious. It's about Andrew. Marcus's stomach tightens. What is it? He has a history, Diana says. 3 prior relationships, all of which ended in restraining orders. Financial manipulation, emotional abuse, the works. I've compiled everything into a report. Marcus feels a surge of vindication, but it's tempered by worry. If Clara doesn't know who she's involved with, the situation could escalate in ways he hadn't anticipated. That evening, Marcus debates whether to share the information with Clara. Ultimately, he decides to consult Karen first. This could work in your favor, Karen says after reviewing the report. But it's also a delicate situation. If we present this in court, it could damage Clara's credibility, especially if she's aware of Andrew's past and still brought him around the kids. And if she's not aware? Marcus asks. Karen pauses. Then it's a wake-up call she might need. But it's not your responsibility to protect her from her choices. During the next court hearing, Karen introduces Diana's report as evidence. The courtroom falls silent as the judge reads through the details, her expression growing increasingly grim. Mrs. Hayes, the judge says, her voice sharp. Were you aware of Mr. Andrew Porter's history when you began your relationship with him? Clara's face pales, and she stammers, "And no, I wasn't. I had no idea." The judge's gaze hardens. This calls into question your judgment and the safety of the children when in your care. Until further notice, Mr. Porter is prohibited from being in contact with Maddie and Jack. Do you understand? Clara nods, her hands trembling. Marcus watches her carefully, wondering if this revelation will finally force her to confront the consequences of her actions. Section 4. The emotional climax. The turning point comes during a supervised visitation with Clara and the kids. Marcus drops them off at a neutral location, staying nearby in case anything goes wrong. As he waits in his car, he sees Clara and Maddie sitting on a bench, deep in conversation. Jack is playing on the swings, but his movements are slower, less enthusiastic than usual. When the visit ends, Maddie climbs into Marcus's car with tears streaming down her face. "Mommy said she's sorry," Maddie sobs. "She said she wishes she could fix everything, but she doesn't know how." Marcus's heart aches as he holds his daughter close. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispers. "It's going to be okay." For the first time, Marcus sees a glimmer of genuine regret in Clara's eyes as she watches them drive away. Later that night, Marcus sits alone in the living room, reflecting on everything that's happened. The pain of Clara's betrayal still lingers, but he feels a growing sense of clarity. He knows his priority is the kids, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to give them a stable, loving home. If this story has kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The final chapter will reveal how Marcus navigates the aftermath of these events and begins to rebuild his life. Stay tuned for the resolution. You won't want to miss it. The court hearings intensify as Clara's credibility takes further hits. After the revelation about Andrew's past, her demeanor shifts dramatically. She's less composed, her arguments becoming defensive and scattered. But Marcus doesn't allow himself to revel in her downfall. His focus remains on the kids, ensuring their well-being during this tumultuous time. At the next custody hearing, Clara's lawyer attempts to shift the narrative, arguing that she's being unfairly judged for a mistake in her personal life. Mrs. Hayes has been a loving and devoted mother, the lawyer argues. Her relationship with Mr. Porter, though regrettable, should not overshadow the years of care and attention she has given to her children. Karen counters with precision. This case is not about punishing Mrs. Hayes for her personal choices. It's about determining what's in the best interest of Maddie and Jack. Given her recent actions and associations, there are serious concerns about her judgment and stability. The judge listens intently, her expression unreadable. Marcus feels the weight of every word, knowing that the final decision is drawing closer. One afternoon, while the kids are at school, Clara shows up at Marcus's house unannounced. He's startled to see her standing on the porch, looking disheveled and visibly upset. "We need to talk," she says, her voice trembling. Marcus hesitates before letting her in. They sit in the living room, the tension thick in the air. "I know I've made mistakes," Clara begins, her hands wringing nervously. "I was selfish and I hurt you and the kids. I didn't realize how much until I saw how they look at me now. Like they don't trust me anymore." Marcus listens silently, his emotions a whirlwind. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Clara continues, tears streaming down her face. "But I need you to know that I'm trying to be better, for them if not for you." Marcus takes a deep breath, his voice steady but firm. "Clara, I appreciate you saying that, but it's not about what you want anymore. It's about what's best for Maddie and Jack. They need stability, and right now, I'm the one providing that." Clara nods, her expression a mix of sadness and acceptance. "I understand. I just hope someday they can forgive me." As Clara leaves, Marcus feels a small sense of closure. It's not forgiveness, but it's a step toward moving forward. The day of the final custody hearing arrives, and the courtroom is packed with family members and supporters on both sides. Marcus is dressed sharply, his demeanor calm and composed. Clara, on the other hand, looks anxious, her hands trembling as she sits beside her lawyer. Karen presents their case with unwavering confidence, highlighting Marcus's consistent role as a provider and caregiver. She emphasizes the evidence of Clara's poor judgment, from her infidelity to her involvement with Andrew. When it's Clara's turn to speak, she makes an emotional plea to the judge. "I know I've made mistakes," she says, her voice breaking, "but I love my children more than anything. I want to be there for them, to show them that I can change and be the mother they deserve." The judge listens carefully, her expression thoughtful. After a brief recess, she delivers her verdict. Based on the evidence presented and the best interests of the children, primary custody is awarded to Mr. Marcus Hayes. Mrs. Clara Hayes will have visitation rights under the conditions outlined by this court. The gavel strikes, and the room is filled with a mix of relief and tension. Marcus feels a wave of emotion wash over him. Gratitude, exhaustion, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. As Marcus leaves the courtroom, Maddie and Jack run to him, their faces lighting up with joy. He kneels down, pulling them into a tight embrace. "Are we staying with you, Daddy?" Maddie asks, her voice hopeful. Marcus smiles, his eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetheart, we're staying together." Clara watches from a distance, her face a mixture of sadness and acceptance. She doesn't approach, knowing that this moment belongs to Marcus and the kids. That evening, Marcus sits on the porch, watching the sunset while Maddie and Jack play in the yard. Sam joins him, handing over a cold beer. "You did it," Sam says, clinking bottles with Marcus. Marcus nods, a small smile on his face. "Yeah, but it doesn't feel like a victory. It just feels necessary." Sam pats him on the back. "You did what you had to do for them. That's what matters." As Marcus watches his kids laughing and playing, he feels a sense of peace he hasn't felt in months. The road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time, he feels like they're heading in the right direction. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The final chapter will show how Marcus begins to rebuild his life and create a brighter future for his family. Don't miss it. The dust from the court's custody decision hasn't fully settled when Clara decides to make one last attempt to regain some semblance of control. A week after the ruling, Marcus receives a message from Clara, asking to meet at a local park to discuss a few important things about the kids. Marcus is wary but agrees, wanting to avoid unnecessary tension. He knows that co-parenting will be challenging, and if this meeting is a step toward cooperation, he's willing to give it a chance. When Marcus arrives, he finds Clara sitting on a bench under a large oak tree. She looks tired, her shoulders slumped and her face pale. But there's a certain edge in her expression that puts Marcus on alert. "Thanks for meeting me," Clara says, her voice subdued. Marcus nods, standing a few feet away. "What's this about?" Clara hesitates before speaking, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what happened, about us, and about the kids. I made mistakes, Marcus, and I know that. But I think we owe it to Maddie and Jack to try and figure out a way forward together." Marcus raises an eyebrow. "We've already figured out the way forward. The court made that clear." Clara's expression tightens. "The court doesn't know everything. They don't see how much I've changed, how much I've learned from all of this. I want us to try again, Marcus, for the kids." Marcus takes a deep breath, his mind racing. For a moment, he considers the possibility. What if Clara is truly remorseful? What if giving her another chance is the best thing for Maddie and Jack? But then he remembers the lies, the betrayal, and the pain she caused. He remembers the tears in Maddie's eyes and the fear in Jack's voice. "No," Marcus says firmly, his voice steady. "We're not getting back together, Clara. The best thing we can do for the kids is to move forward separately and show them what a healthy, stable life looks like." Clara's face crumples, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Don't you see? I made those mistakes because I was lost, Marcus. I didn't know how to handle everything, and Andrew he was just a distraction. I never stopped loving you." Marcus shakes his head, his heart heavy but resolute. "Love doesn't look like what you did, Clara. Love is about trust, respect, and honesty. You broke all of that. This isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting our kids and giving them the life they deserve. Clara sobs openly, and for a moment, Marcus feels a pang of sympathy. But he knows that sympathy isn't enough to repair what's been broken. As Marcus turns to leave, Clara's tone shifts. There's a sharpness in her voice now, a desperation that sends a chill down his spine. "If you think this is over, you're wrong," she says, her eyes narrowing. "I'll find a way to get my kids back. I'll show everyone that you're not the perfect father you pretend to be." Marcus stops in his tracks, turning to face her. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," Clara snaps. "You're not as untouchable as you think." Marcus stares at her, his jaw tightening. He realizes then that Clara isn't just remorseful. She's grasping at straws, trying to regain control of a situation that's slipped beyond her reach. "I'm not afraid of you, Clara," Marcus says quietly. "Do whatever you think you need to, but I won't let you hurt our kids again." With that, he walks away, his heart pounding. He knows this isn't the end of Clara's attempts to regain control, but he's more determined than ever to protect Maddie and Jack. A few days later, Marcus receives a call from Maddie's school. The principal informs him that Clara showed up unexpectedly during recess and tried to take Maddie home without permission. She seemed agitated. The principal says, her tone concerned. "Maddie didn't want to go, and we had to ask Mrs. Hayes to leave the premises." Marcus feels his anger boil over. This isn't just about Clara's poor judgment anymore. It's about her refusal to respect boundaries and prioritize the children's well-being. That evening, Marcus calls Karen to inform her of the incident. "This is exactly why we fought for primary custody," Karen says, her voice calm but firm. "We need to document this and make sure the court is aware of her behavior. It's clear that Clara still isn't putting the kids' needs first." Marcus files for a modification to the custody agreement, seeking to limit Clara's visitation rights. It's a painful decision, but one he knows is necessary to ensure Maddie and Jack's safety and stability. In the final hearing, Marcus presents evidence of Clara's recent behavior, including the incident at the school. Clara tries to defend herself, but her arguments lack credibility. "I just wanted to see my daughter," she says tearfully. "I missed them so much, and I didn't know what else to do." The judge listens carefully before delivering her decision. "Mrs. Hayes, while it's clear that you love your children, your recent actions demonstrate a lack of respect for the court's orders and the boundaries necessary for their stability. As such, I am modifying the visitation agreement to require supervision until further review." The gavel strikes, and Marcus feels a mixture of relief and sorrow. This isn't the outcome he wanted, but it's the one that's best for his kids. In the aftermath of the hearing, Marcus focuses on rebuilding his life and strengthening his bond with Maddie and Jack. He enrolls them in therapy to help them process everything they've been through, and he attends parenting workshops to ensure he's providing them with the support they need. Slowly but surely, the house begins to feel like a home again. The laughter returns, and while there are still tough days, Marcus feels a renewed sense of hope for the future. If you've been captivated by Marcus's journey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The final chapter will reveal how he moves forward and creates a brighter future for his family. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. It's been 2 weeks since the court modified Clara's visitation rights. Marcus tries to settle into the new normal, but the tension lingers. Maddie and Jack have started to relax, their laughter coming easier as the days go by. But Marcus can't shake the feeling that Clara isn't done. He's proven right one Saturday morning when he notices a car parked just down the street. It's Clara's. She sits in the driver's seat, her face barely visible through the tinted windows. Marcus keeps an eye on her throughout the day, but she doesn't approach the house. Later that evening, he finds Maddie standing at the living room window, staring out at the car. "Is Mommy waiting for us?" she asks quietly, her voice tinged with worry. "No, sweetheart," Marcus says gently, pulling her away from the window. "She's just taking some time for herself." But inside, Marcus feels a pang of frustration. Clara's actions aren't just invasive, they're unsettling for the kids. That night, Marcus decides to confront Clara. After the kids are asleep, He walks down the street to her car, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Clara rolls down the window as he approaches, her expression guarded. "What are you doing here, Clara?" Marcus asks, his voice low but firm. "I just wanted to see them," Clara replies, her tone defensive. "You can't keep me away from my own children." Marcus takes a deep breath, fighting to keep his temper in check. "This isn't about keeping you away. You know the rules, Clara. If you want to see Maddie and Jack, you need to go through the proper channels. Showing up unannounced and sitting outside the house isn't helping anyone." Clara's eyes flash with anger. "You've turned them against me. Maddie barely talks to me during visits, and Jack won't even look at me. How is that fair?" "They're scared, Clara," Marcus says, his voice softening despite his frustration. "They need time to heal, and the way you're acting isn't giving them that time." For a moment, Clara looks like she might argue, but then her shoulders slump. She stares at the steering wheel, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to fix this." Marcus feels a flicker of sympathy but quickly pushes it aside. "You start by following the court's orders and putting their needs first. That's all you can do." Without another word, he turns and walks back to the house, leaving Clara sitting alone in the dark. The next day, Marcus gets a call from Diana, the private investigator. "I've been keeping tabs on Clara, like you asked," Diana says. "I think you're going to want to see what I found." Diana sends over surveillance footage showing Clara meeting with Andrew at a coffee shop. Their conversation is animated, with Clara gesturing wildly and Andrew leaning in close. At one point, Clara hands him a manila envelope, and he nods, slipping it into his briefcase. "What do you think she's up to?" Marcus asks, his stomach churning. "It's hard to say," Diana replies, "but given his track record, I wouldn't be surprised if he's trying to manipulate her into something. Be careful, Marcus. This could get messy." Marcus spends the rest of the day on edge, replaying the footage in his mind. What is Clara planning, and how far is she willing to go to regain control? The tension reaches its peak during the next supervised visitation. Marcus arrives early to drop off the kids, but as he's walking them into the neutral meeting space, he spots Andrew sitting in a car across the street. His presence sends a jolt of anger through Marcus. Andrew has no legal right to be near Maddie and Jack, and his involvement only adds fuel to an already volatile situation. After dropping the kids off with the supervisor, Marcus walks straight up to Andrew's car and knocks on the window. Andrew rolls it down, smirking. "Marcus Hayes, nice to finally meet you. What are you doing here?" Marcus demands, his voice low but sharp. "Just making sure Clara's doing okay," Andrew says, his tone dripping with condescension. "She's been under a lot of stress lately. You know how it is." Marcus clenches his fists, struggling to stay calm. "You need to leave. Right now. You have no business being here." Andrew's smirk widens. "Or what? You'll call the cops? Go ahead. Let's see how that plays out." Before Marcus can respond, the supervisor steps outside and waves him over. "Mr. Hayes, can I speak with you for a moment?" Marcus nods stiffly, giving Andrew one last glare before walking away. The supervisor informs Marcus that Clara has been making veiled threats during her visits, claiming she'll find a way to take back what's hers. The supervisor agrees to document the incidents and report them to the court, but Marcus knows this isn't enough. Clara and Andrew are becoming increasingly reckless, and it's only a matter of time before something serious happens. That evening, Marcus calls Karen to discuss his next steps. "We need to file for a restraining order against Andrew," Karen says. "And if Clara continues to violate the visitation agreement, we can petition for a further reduction in her rights." Marcus agrees, though the thought of escalating the legal battle fills him with dread. All he wants is to protect his kids and move forward, but Clara's refusal to let go is making that nearly impossible. As the situation intensifies, Marcus finds himself reflecting on how much he's changed. A few months ago, he was a trusting husband who believed in the stability of his family. Now, he's a single father navigating a minefield of betrayal and legal battles. Despite the challenges, Marcus feels a newfound sense of strength and resilience. He's learned to trust his instincts, stand up for himself, and prioritize what truly matters. For Maddie and Jack, the changes are evident too. Maddie has started to open up more in therapy, expressing her feelings about the divorce and her complicated relationship with Clara. Jack, though still shy, has begun to find comfort in Marcus's unwavering presence. If you've been following this journey, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The final chapter will reveal how Marcus confronts the ultimate challenge and secures a brighter future for his family. You won't want to miss it. It's the day of Clara's next supervised visitation, and Marcus feels a storm brewing. He can sense it in the way she's been acting, erratic, desperate, and unhinged. After everything that's happened, the court hearings, Andrew's appearance, and her veiled threats, he knows today might bring the final showdown. Before leaving for the meeting location, Marcus double-checks everything. He reviews the restraining order against Andrew, ensures Maddie and Jack are calm and prepared, and makes sure Diana, the private investigator, is on standby in case Clara or Andrew crosses the line. The tension is thick as they arrive. Clara is already there, pacing outside the building with an anxious energy that makes Marcus's skin crawl. When she sees them, her face lights up. Not with joy, but with something more intense, almost manic. During the visitation, Clara tries her best to act composed. She sits with Maddie and Jack, asking about their school projects and favorite movies. But Maddie's answers are short, her body language stiff. Jack stays quiet, clinging to his backpack. At one point, Clara leans in closer to Maddie, her voice low but urgent. "Don't you miss Mommy, sweetheart? Don't you want to come home with me?" Maddie glances toward the supervisor, her eyes wide. "We are home, Mommy. We live with Daddy now." Clara's composure cracks. Her smile falters, and her voice rises. "But that's not fair. Mommy loves you just as much as Daddy does. Don't you want things to go back to the way they were?" The supervisor steps in, her tone firm. "Mrs. Hayes, please remember the guidelines for this visitation." Clara sits back, her jaw tight and her eyes brimming with tears. Marcus watches from the observation room, his heart breaking for Maddie and Jack. As the visitation ends, Clara walks out of the meeting room, her expression dark. Marcus stands nearby, waiting to take the kids home. "We need to talk," Clara says, her voice cold. Marcus glances at the kids, who are holding hands and looking nervous. "Not now, Clara. The kids have had enough for today." "That's not your decision to make," Clara snaps, stepping closer. Her voice drops, filled with venom. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you're the hero in all of this." Marcus keeps his voice steady, refusing to engage. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's about what's best for Maddie and Jack. And if you can't see that, then we really don't have anything to talk about." But Clara doesn't back down. "You're ruining their lives, Marcus. You're ruining my life. I won't let you take everything from me." Before Marcus can respond, the supervisor intervenes, ushering Clara away and reminding her of the court's orders. Clara leaves, but not before throwing a final, chilling warning over her shoulder. This isn't over. That night, Marcus receives a frantic call from Diana. "I've been keeping tabs on Andrew, like you asked," Diana says, her voice tense. "You're not going to believe this. He's planning something big, and it involves Clara." Marcus's stomach drops. "What do you mean?" "They've been meeting more frequently, and I overheard them talking about a surprise for you," Diana explains. "It sounded like they were planning to show up at your house." Marcus's mind races. If Andrew and Clara are working together, they could pose a serious threat. Not just to him, but to Maddie and Jack. Without wasting another second, Marcus calls Karen and the local police, reporting the situation and requesting additional support. Just as Marcus is finishing his call, headlights sweep across the front window. He peers outside to see Andrew's car pulling into the driveway. Clara steps out first, followed by Andrew, who looks smug and unbothered. Marcus's heart pounds as he moves to the door, phone in hand. He steps outside, keeping a safe distance from the two intruders. "What are you doing here?" Marcus demands, his voice firm. "We're here to see the kids," Clara says, her tone defiant. You know that's not allowed, Marcus replies. You need to leave before this gets worse for you. Andrew chuckles, stepping forward. Relax, Marcus. We're just here to talk. No need to get all worked up. But Marcus isn't fooled. He can see the tension in Clara's stance and the calculated glint in Andrew's eyes. He knows this isn't just a casual visit. Before things can escalate further, the sound of sirens fills the air. Marcus feels a wave of relief as two police cars pull up, their lights flashing. This is private property, one of the officers says, stepping out of the car. What's going on here? Marcus quickly explains the situation, showing the restraining order and detailing Clara and Andrew's recent behavior. The officers turn to Clara and Andrew, their expressions stern. You're in violation of a court order, the officer says. You need to leave immediately. Clara protests, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to see my kids. He's keeping them from me. But the officer doesn't budge. Ma'am, you need to leave. If you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to take you into custody. Andrew glares at Marcus, his smirk fading. You think this makes you a good father? Keeping their mother away from them? You're pathetic. Marcus doesn't respond, holding his ground as the officers escort Clara and Andrew off the property. After the incident, Marcus sits with Maddie and Jack, who witnessed the commotion from their bedroom window. Are they gone? Maddie asks, her voice trembling. Yes, sweetheart, Marcus says, pulling her into a hug. They're gone, and they won't bother us again. Jack climbs onto Marcus's lap, his small arms wrapping tightly around his father. Are we safe, Daddy? Marcus feels a lump in his throat as he holds both kids close. We're safe, he says, his voice firm. I promise. Later that night, as the house grows quiet, Marcus reflects on everything that's happened. The betrayal, the legal battles, and the constant tension have tested him in ways he never imagined. But through it all, he's found strength. Not just in himself, but in his love for Maddie and Jack. He knows there are still challenges ahead, but for the first time in months, he feels a sense of peace. He's done everything he can to protect his family, and he's ready to face whatever comes next. If you've been captivated by this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The final chapter will show how Marcus and his kids rebuild their lives and move forward with hope. Stay tuned for the conclusion. The police incident marked a turning point in Marcus's life. Clara and Andrew's blatant disregard for the court's orders resulted in serious consequences. Clara was ordered to attend mandatory counseling before she could petition for any changes to her visitation rights. Andrew, on the other hand, was charged with trespassing and violating the restraining order, effectively removing him from the picture altogether. For Marcus, the days that followed were a mix of relief and exhaustion. Knowing his children were finally safe brought a sense of peace, but the emotional toll of the past few months couldn't be ignored. With Clara temporarily out of the picture, Marcus focused on healing and stability for Maddie and Jack. He continued their therapy sessions, where they were encouraged to express their feelings openly. Maddie began to talk more about her confusion and anger toward Clara, while Jack worked through his fears of abandonment. At home, Marcus created new routines to give the kids a sense of security. Sunday nights became movie nights, complete with popcorn and a fort built from couch cushions. He also started taking them on weekend hikes, introducing them to the serenity of nature and the joy of simple pleasures. One Saturday morning, as they stood at the top of a hill overlooking a sunlit valley, Maddie turned to Marcus with a small smile. Daddy, are we going to be okay now? Marcus knelt down, meeting her gaze. We already are, sweetheart. We're stronger than ever, and nothing's going to change that. Meanwhile, Clara's life took a different path. Forced to confront her actions and the damage they caused, she begrudgingly attended her counseling sessions. At first, she resisted, blaming Marcus for everything. But as time went on, she began to see the patterns in her behavior and the choices that led to her downfall. In one particularly emotional session, her counselor challenged her to write a letter to Maddie and Jack, explaining her actions and expressing genuine remorse. It took Clara days to complete, and when she finally handed the letter to Marcus, her hands were shaking. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quietly. I just want them to know I'm trying to be better. Marcus read the letter before giving it to the kids. It was raw, heartfelt, and filled with regret. While he didn't fully trust Clara's intentions yet, he could see a glimmer of genuine change. Through the chaos, Marcus discovered a new sense of resilience and self-awareness. The betrayal that once shattered him had become a catalyst for growth. He learned to set boundaries, prioritize his mental health, and trust himself again. At work, his colleagues noticed a newfound confidence in him. He took on leadership roles with ease, earning respect from both his peers and his students. His passion for teaching seemed to reignite, and he found himself smiling more often. One evening, after grading papers, Marcus opened his laptop and began writing about his experiences. It wasn't just about venting. It was about documenting his journey, the lessons he learned, and the strength he found in adversity. He didn't know if he'd ever share it with anyone, but the act of writing felt cathartic. Months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Marcus and the kids gathered at the local community center for a family event. It was a charity fundraiser organized by the school, complete with games, food stalls, and live music. Maddie and Jack ran from booth to booth, their laughter echoing through the air. As Marcus watched them, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The road had been rough, but they'd made it through together. Toward the end of the event, Maddie tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Daddy, can we get a family picture? Marcus smiled. Of course, sweetheart. They posed in front of a giant pumpkin display, Jack on one side of Marcus and Maddie on the other. As the camera clicked, Marcus realized it wasn't just a photograph. It was a symbol of everything they'd overcome and the strength they'd built as a family. Eventually, Clara completed her counseling and petitioned for supervised visitation with the kids. While Marcus was hesitant at first, he recognized the progress she'd made and agreed to give her a chance. Their first visit was tense but civil. Clara was more subdued, listening carefully to the kids and respecting their boundaries. Maddie was cautious, while Jack remained quiet, but Marcus could see the beginnings of a fragile connection forming. After the visit, Maddie asked Marcus, "Do you think Mommy's really changed?" "I think she's trying," Marcus replied, "and that's a good start. But remember, it's okay to take your time. You don't have to rush into anything." As the months turned into a year, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Marcus continued to prioritize his kids, his work, and his personal growth. He found joy in the little moments. Maddie's excitement over her art projects, Jack's giggles during bedtime stories, and the quiet evenings spent reading by the fire. One evening, as they sat around the dining table playing a board game, Maddie looked up and said, "Daddy, I like our family." Marcus smiled, his heart full. "I do too, sweetheart." Marcus's journey wasn't without scars, but it was a testament to the power of resilience, love, and self-discovery. The betrayal that once felt insurmountable had become a stepping stone toward a brighter future. He didn't just rebuild his life, he created a stronger, more authentic version of it. And as he looked at his children, he knew that every challenge, every sleepless night, and every tough decision had been worth it. If the story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.